Today I'm at Bolsover Castle in Derbyshire, and when you come along the road you see it on top of a hillside, crouching on the end of a ridge, like a lion about to spring into the valley below. The castle was built halfway between the last of the fortified manor houses and the advent of a romantic revival pseudo castle. The castle was built on the foundations of a real Norman castle erected by William Peveril and later held by the crown until Edward VI gave it to George Talbot, Earl of Shrewsbury, Bess's fourth husband. George Talbot gifted the castle to his son, who then sold it in 1613 to his stepbrother Sir Charles Cavendish, Bess's second son. Sir Charles had inherited his mother's urge for building. Finding the keep in ruins, he set out to build a new one, employing, of course, Huntington Smithson as master mason. When the Cavendish family bought the site, they were inspired by its medieval origins and romanticisms of owning a castle. Using entirely local materials, they set to build the new Bolsover Castle for entertaining and pleasure. The Cavendishes combined ideas from English history with continental art and architecture to create a fresh and innovative aristocratic retreat. This refit was completed in 1616. Unfortunately, Sir Charles died the following year. Sir Charles's son, Sir William, later Earl and Duke of Newcastle, added a riding school and then a gallery range that linked it with a keep. All this was completed when Charles I and his queen Henrietta Maria arrived to be lavishly entertained in a stay at Bolsover, which said to have cost William £20,000. Though this may have included the building and certainly included the production cost of Ben Jonson's elaborate Mass, Love's Welcome Ball. The expense did not weaken William's loyalty, and he commanded the king's northern and midland armies in the Civil War. During his absence, Bolsover was captured by the parliamentary troops and later slighted through William's return in due course to repair most of the damage before making Welbeck his principal seat. Whilst in Paris, William Cavendish met the gorgeous Margaret Lucas, and they married in Paris in 1645. Against the expectations of time, Margaret was the equal to William in intellect. She was the first woman to be invited to a meeting of the Royal Society among scientists and academics. She wore extravagant clothes and gained a reputation as a writer. Margaret wrote poetry and drama and is well known for her novel The Blazing World. Bolsover Castle became a sophisticated 17th century palace which reflected the life, aspirations and interests of the wealthy aristocrats William and Margaret Cavendish. William's life as a poet, courtier and nobleman is mirrored by the three distinctive building ranges. The little castle has 30, in my opinion, rather gloomy rooms, some with rib vaulting and others plain. Some would say an architectural masterpiece, me a wish-wash of designs. In all, I would say he'd be rather cosy. William wanted the little castle interiors to delight and intrigue guests. The frescoes depicts gods and goddesses from Greek mythology with rich Christian tapestries depicting stories from the Bible. Ceilings are star-spangled with different painted frescoes, ornate paneling, and extravagant names like Heaven's Room and Star Chamber. The floors have intricate stone designs and fireplaces studded with polished marbles, all this to amuse and inspire discussion amongst his friends. While the terrace range provided state apartments grand enough to entertain the king and his court, and views to write poetry and plays about, the walls by contrast would have been lined with grand and formal marital images of William on horseback, and family portraits showcased the Cavendish dynasty. One would ask, was all this just for show? The answer would be yes. The lavish riding school is to the south, and the first building you see as you come through the visitors' centre. This is a replica of the one built at Welbeck across the Nottinghamshire border, with similar Flemish style gables. William believed that after man, the horse is a most noble animal. As a young man, he built his own riding house at Welbeck Abbey, where he could practice and perform the art of montage. He encouraged Prince Charles, later King Charles II, to ride, and the prince wrote affectionately to William that he was practicing every day. During 16 years of exile, William continued to train in his riding house at Antwerp. Aristocrats from all over Europe came to watch him perform and were astonished by his skills. William brought excellent horses from North Africa, Spain and Turkey, as well as commissioning huge paintings of his favourites to show off her magnificence. On his return to England, William completed a splendid riding house at Bolsover, but he was disappointed by his own torn and ruined estate and lack of court office. His mastery of a noble art was a reminder of the earlier and happier years, As he grew older and retired from public life, William continued to watch and instruct his horses in the Bolsover riding house. The garden design was a garden for pleasure and delight, with a statue of Venus, the goddess of love, at its center. Guests strolling along the wall walk would look out at the statue of Venus emerging from her bath. There were niches and rooms in the garden walls, including a warm, secluded chamber with a decorative fireplace for intimate banquets. Instead of a formal perched, there were fan-trained fruit trees and colourful planting around the walls. Fanciful designs cut into the turf with coloured gravels may have been added for special occasions. Unfortunately, Bolsover Castle declined in the 18th century, but its partial restoration in the 19th century by a Victorian vicar and his wife prevented major losses. Henry Cavendish, William's son, helped with a further restoration project. By the mid-18th century, the estate had passed to Henrietta Harley, Countess of Oxford. She lived at Welbeck and only occasionally visited Bolsover. She funded the re-roofing of a little castle and the riding house range, but the terrace range was left to decay, and 1777 it was in ruins. The Reverend John Hamilton Gray, curate of Bolsover from 1829, leased the castle from the 4th Duke of Portland. He and his wife were inspired by the faded grandeur of a little castle and refurnished it with Victorian curiosities. Coal mining had become a huge industry, and a Bolsover colliery opened in 1889, and the population of Bolsover began to grow. Little did they know how this industry would affect the castle structure. The already fragile buildings were beginning to suffer from subsidence and acid corrosion from the coal mining industry. Urgent work included inserting steel rods into the walls and concrete into the fireplaces flues of a little castle. The terrace range was pinned and the terrace itself secured. The Cavendish family, Dukes of Portland, handed over the castle in 1945 to the then Ministry of Works, as it was in such poor shape. The riding house was used as a drill room and gym, and was used as a rifle range. If you look close enough, you may even notice the holes in the wall made during target practice. The castle has changed a lot since the medieval times. Some say it's progress, but I'm glad English heritage took over its keep for visitors like myself to enjoy the splendour of this Derbyshire curiosity.